Man, what a day. Welcome back, everybody. It is Tuesday, the 7th of March, 2023. And I'm not sure if anyone's actually fucking ever listening to this or following this, but you probably noticed this is coming out a bit late. Man, what a day. I said that like I'm trying this new thing on this podcast where I start with like something profound. I say something that is like, it like catches your attention. Because I feel like I could maybe retain an audience a bit better by doing something like that. But I'm pretty sure today is day 66. I couldn't tell you. But I have had quite the 24 hours. Like really just a classic. Anyway, I don't want to get into exactly what's going on for reasons of there are people that listen to this that know me, that you know I don't need anybody reaching out because I am fine. I'm just chilling. But I have just got a lot to process at the moment. And I don't know how to discuss that on here without it being like a thing. I don't think I've fully come to terms with or fully processed the whole situation, and I think just it'll take a bit of time before I can actually talk about it. But today was actually, I'll be completely honest, today was almost a day where I didn't do this. It would have been the first day this year that I didn't actually complete a podcast with an upload daily since I started doing them. And I'm going to get it done, and I'm doing it right now, and I've been pushed to do it by Mads. Obviously said you can't wallow in self-pity, or you can't just sit here like, you know what I mean, and not sort of continue the things you committed to. I think that speed bumps happen, and it is what it is. But I have learned a valuable lesson in humility. I have a problem with ego, right? That's just mainly what it is. I have a problem with ego, and I think that you can really only be forced into a perspective of humility. I don't know if you can. I mean, maybe not. Maybe that's just me. At least I think I have to be forced into a perspective of humility. I don't think that the ego that I'd built, this idea of myself that I had built, like that balloon, had to be popped, or at least started to deflate, so that I could. I guess I wouldn't let another perspective in. You know what I mean? And so that it is what it is. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it anymore. It's really hard to go through it. I actually explained the other day. The situation about that girl that I asked out, and like ex-girlfriends and stuff. I don't really think I've ever been in a position like this before, where I've had like a perspective forced on me, and it's just a little blip on the map of Mitch, as Mad says, but it still is like. I mean, it's been let's say like 48 hours or less than 48 hours. So it's just one of those things. And I don't know how to continue this podcast. Like I not in general, like across the rest of the year, this will just be one podcast out of 365. But I don't know how to continue with this specific day, without going into detail about the situation. But I don't want to do that yet because I haven't fully processed it yet. And I feel like I'll say things that are out of step or out of line, or, you know what I mean? I don't want to react out of anger or frustration or sadness or confusion or anything like that. So I'm going to avoid it at all costs. But maybe I could go back to, maybe I could tell a story about ego or pride. And something that's a bit more relevant, and it takes a little bit longer. So I have a best mate, and we have been friends since like, I'm going to say like year 9, 10, right? And so that's going way back. I graduated in 2013. So 2012 would be year 11. 2011 would be year 10. So like, let's just say 2009, 2010, right? And there have been, and so we've been friends since then. So that's what, 12, 13 years, let's say. For argument's sake, we'll just say 13 years. What happened when we finished high school? He and I had a blow up on two separate scenarios. We had two separate blow ups, and I have this tendency, and I don't know where I got it from or how it happened. Oops, but I have this tendency to push people away from me so that I don't get hurt. And you know, I think that there's a lot that goes into it. But in this scenario with my mate, I had too much pride to let something go. I had an idea of myself, an idea of who he was, and both of those were warped. And the first time, or anyway, we stopped speaking. We had this big argument. We stopped speaking, and both of us have since reconciled. We talk almost weekly now. He lives in Darwin, so we don't talk as often as we would like. But you know, when we're together, things are like, you know, like fucking besties since we were kids, sort of thing. Anyway, what happened was something to do with and loosely based around me and my girlfriend at the time had split up, and for a couple of weeks while I was at uni, because I went to uni once before, I only did film studies for a couple months, but and I left because I couldn't afford to live in Melbourne. In that few weeks that we'd been split up, I slept with somebody else because I was a single man. And then when I couldn't afford to live in Melbourne, I came back to Sale where we lived. I got back with her because I was, you know, I had access, there was direct contact, and I lied to her about being with another person. Now, I should have just been honest. I should have said, yes, I did. It happened. It is what it is. But instead, I said no. And somehow or another, I got wind that my best mate, was going to tell her that. And I was like, fuck you, you dog. And so it turns out that wasn't true. But at the time, I had an ego. At the time, I mean, I still have somewhat of an ego. But at the time, my ego was like flared. Because I was a teenage boy, fresh out of high school. Who the fuck does this guy think he is? I had this idea of myself. I had an idea of who he was, and so I just stopped talking to him. And then I think pride and ego stopped us from talking to each other, because he was like, well, if you're not going to talk to me, I'm not going to talk to you. And then, so for the longest time, we didn't talk to each other. Anyway, a long time passed. I reckon it was about 11 or 12 months, maybe 13, 14 months passed before me and this other girl split. And then, so we actually ended up going on to have like another 12 months in our relationship. I think it was 3 years, and then we split up for a couple of months, and then for a couple of weeks, probably 3 weeks, and then we got back together for another year, and then we decided actually this isn't going to work out. And so I got back in contact with him. I can't remember how that happened. And then I realized that the guy that had told me about it was actually just like, I guess, I don't know, jealous of me being friends with my mate. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But anyway, it ended up being a lie. And so ego and pride stopped me from talking to my best mate because I wasn't willing to see the truth. I wasn't willing to have another perspective, right? Why would my best mate, someone who prided himself on being my best mate, why would he lie about something that would then hurt me, right? And so when he was telling me the truth, I should have listened. And then the second time we stopped talking was actually because we just started smoking pot, and it was a fucking stupid fight. But anyway, I ended up getting pot that we could then both smoke, but he wasn't working at the time. And so I said to him that I'd give him his when he could pay me for it, because I was already like broke. I didn't have any money. So he was like, yep. And then I gave him, I think I jumped his fence or whatever, something, and I snuck like a nug into his shed, and I said, hey mate, here, I left some here for when you're all good. And then a couple of days had passed. We hadn't spoken to each other because I was working overnight, whatever. And then he messaged me, and I messaged him. I said, hey, I'm going to come round. I'm going to bring that stuff. He said, hey, don't bother. I actually ended up getting some of my own. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I already got some of my own. And I was like, bro, I put myself out to get you some. Like I bought twice as much as I need so that I can get you a little bit. And he was like, oh, true. And I was like, well, I need to I need to pay for it somehow. Like, what's going on? What's going to happen? We had this mad argument about it. And he basically told me to stop acting like everybody owes me something. And in this moment, he did owe me something, but it was also an ego thing. And so those are 2 times in the past that I have identified with ego. And so I have these weird moments where I go through phases of gratitude and humility and maybe that's my learning phases, right? And then I have these phases that I go through where I am like extremely self-loving and vain to a point where, or to a fault, essentially, to a fault. I have a high idea of myself, and not that I have a low idea of others, but I just put myself above them. And that is a toxic trait to have. It's something that I know is toxic, something that I know isn't good to be around, and it's not a good mentality to have. There are some good aspects. It's better than being around the sad sack that thinks lowly of himself all the time, right? But to think that I am better than other people with no evidence of it, omnipotent. I don't even know what that word means. I read it before when I was looking up humble and pride, whatever. Let me just Google that real quick so that I can say it. I just wanted to say it on the podcast. It sounds smart. Having unlimited power. Having great power and influence. I mean, like, I like to think I am, but also I think it's completely predicated on position, description, and title. And so, anyway, I like to think I'm a natural born leader, but sometimes in that identity of self, sometimes that identity of self comes with an ego, and that ego needs to be squashed. And I don't know if it's easily squashed. I think that you have to be shown or be squashed. And I'm going through that right now. And so thank you for listening. If you've got advice, if you listen to this whole thing and you've got advice on how to deal with ego, if you've got like quotes that you've heard, you will know more eventually. I will tell all on this, but it's just this podcast is also like my real life. It's my daily life. So I don't want to go into anything right now or too quickly, because I also don't know. I haven't fully processed it. Like, with time, I need to take time to actually process it before other people can comment and hear about it. So anyway, thank you for listening, and have a good night, or whatever time it is you listen to this. Have a good rest of that time.